Hi everyone, welcome back. So the channel's about 3 months old now, and it's approaching the 300 subscribers mark. So thank you for that. Your support is greatly appreciated. So most of the videos I've done have looked at music theory, and some of the more tricky things we've covered are things like modes of the major scale. And I've decided it's a good point to show you a shortcut that I use and my students really seem to like. It seems to work for them, which is instead of taking the usual approach of modes where you learn the modes and you look within them and go, oh look, there's a few pentatonic scales in there. You kind of work in reverse. You can actually take a pentatonic scale and add to it to create the modes. So what we'll do is we'll simplify this by ignoring Locrian because we don't use it much. We'll mention Phrygian, but we won't dwell on it. We'll look at the three major modes, which are Ionian, or major, Lydian and mixed Lydian, and we'll look at the three minor modes, which are Dorian, Aeolian, and maybe Phrygian. We won't dwell on it too much. Now what you do is you take a pentatonic scale and you add just 2 notes, and that gives you those like extra modes. It's as simple as that. So let me show you what I mean. Let's first of all, let's take a pentatonic scale that you're probably very familiar with, especially if you've seen my other videos. Pattern 1 of the A minor pentatonic scale. So starting from the 5th fret, we've got... Okay, so imagine if you add just 2 notes. Specifically, let's add the 2nd, and let's add the... So this is what we've got so far. We've got 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, and let's add the flat 6 to that. Okay, and that's given us the natural minor scale. Okay, and then we've got the usual flat 7 and back to the root note. So now that's the first octave. The second octave is exactly the same. You add the 2nd, we've got the minor 3rd anyway in our pentatonic scale, we've got the 4th, we've got the 5th, and we can add the flat 6, flat 7 as usual, root note, and 2 and flat 3. So we've got this scale. And that's our natural minor scale. Now the important notes in there, the second degree of the scale, the major second, that's common to both Aeolian and Dorian. The magic note, the one that really differentiates the two different modes, is the flat 6. So this flat 6 here is an Aeolian note, but it's not a Dorian note. Dorian would need a major 6. That would be here instead. Okay, so here's how you adapt your pentatonic scale to make it either Aeolian or Dorian. Aeolian, you add the 2 and the flat 6. Dorian, you add the 2 and the major 6. Same in the second octave. So if I go from the next octave, I've got root 2, flat 3, 4, 5. If I want Aeolian, the sad sounding scale, I add a sad minor 6th. If I want a slightly lifted sound for Dorian, I add a major 6th. Okay, and that looks like this. So notice on this diagram, I've put a pentatonic scale in the middle, and in the top left, I've put a blues scale. That's really easy. You just take a pentatonic scale and add a blue note. In the top right, I've done the Aeolian, or the natural minor scale. On the bottom left, I've done the Dorian scale. On the bottom right, for the sake of completeness, I've added the Phrygian scale, but we can kind of ignore that most of the time. We don't use it too often. You'll notice on this diagram as well, you've got in grey the chord notes of a minor triad, okay? And that's your landmark to find your pentatonic scale. And then the pentatonic scale is your landmark to find all the other scales, the blues scale, the Aeolian, the Dorian, the Phrygian scale. Doing the same thing with a major pentatonic, let's take this pattern. Now some people call that pattern 1 of the major pentatonic scale. It's also pattern 2 of the minor pentatonic scale, and it gets really confusing, and these numbers are kind of arbitrary anyway, so I recommend you just call it the E-shaped scale, because you can see an E chord hiding behind it, especially where I've drawn it here, where I've put little grey circles behind the scale notes. So similar thing, we can add we can add blue notes to make it a blues scale, or we can add just 2 notes to make it the major scale, or Ionian, the Lydian scale, or the mixed Lydian scale. Specifically, this is what you do. We've got the 1 and the 2 anyway, and the 3 in our scale. We can add the 4th note, and we've got the 5th anyway in our pentatonic scale. We've got the 6th, we can add the 7th note, and then back to the root. That's the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. The second octave is the same. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, extra 2 if we want it. Now, the great thing about the major modes is you don't have to do a lot to adapt them to make them, say, Lydian and mixed Lydian. So if you want to make this Lydian, you just sharpen the 4 of a major scale. But let's not do that. Let's think about how it compares to the pentatonic scale. Okay, so we're just going to add 2 notes to a pentatonic scale. We're going to add the sharp 4 and the major 7, and then the second octave is the same. We'll go 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, major 7. So we've got this. Similar idea with mixed Lydian, we can add 2 notes. Specifically, we're going to add 1, 2, 3, we're going to add 4, we're going to add, well, the 5's already there, 6, and we're going to add a minor 7th. Okay, so we've got second octave, same idea, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, or minor 7, and then back to the 1. So in case you're wondering, how do I know what mode to actually use? Well, if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know, but I'll just give you a brief overview. So if a chord is behaving as a 1 chord, you use the 1 mode, major or Ionian. If a chord's behaving as a 4 chord, you use the 4 mode, Lydian, and so on. Now, you can also identify these by ear with some practice, but I'm going to show you some shortcuts. So the first shortcut is, a chord on its own doesn't always give you enough information. Sometimes you need more than that. Sometimes it is enough. So for example, if I've got an A7, then a dominant 7 chord instantly shouts to me mixed Lydian, okay? Because a dominant 7 chord only happens on the 5th chord of a major key, right? So therefore you have to use the 5th mode. If I've got something like a major 7 sharp 11, that only happens on the 4 chord. So it'd be Lydian. So that does happen. Sometimes a chord on its own gives you enough information, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you need more. But here's a couple of really easy and common approaches to help you find modes. Let's take the minor ones first. Let's say you've got a chord progression that sounds very dark and sad, like A minor to D minor. That's basically giving you the minor mode, natural minor or Aeolian. If you ever see a minor chord going up a 4th to a major chord, and you can even hear that little lift, that's the Dorian lift, as I call it. So what you've got there is, whenever a minor chord goes up a 4th, think Dorian. In fact, you can even see that major 6th hiding within the chord. Okay, so if you've got that sad sound, it's natural minor. The lift is Dorian. Now, it doesn't have to be A minor to D. As long as a D happens somewhere, it's a really big giveaway. You've got a Dorian progression. You might have A minor, G, then D, and there's that lift again. You can hear it. You can hear it in things like Wicked Game by Chris Isaak, where you've got B minor, A, and lift on the E chord. Whereas if it was Aeolian, it would have a kind of sad drop like that. Okay? And I can show you that with bar chords. B minor, A, E. There's that major 6 right there. This also works with the major modes. Let's say I've got something like A, and then go back to G. Well, those are 2 major chords next to each other. They must be a 5 and then a 4 chord. That's the only time that happens in a major key. Imagine the 5 chord is the one that sounds like home. I even added another chord there, but it doesn't matter because that 5 chord is the one I'm resolving on. So I need the 5 mode, I need mixed Lydian. And I can do that by starting with the pentatonic scale and adding my flat 7 whenever I want, and my 4 if I want. Let's imagine you've got this progression now. Let's imagine you've got, say, something like that. It's clearly a 1, 4, 5 chord progression because whenever you see 2 majors there and there must be a 4 and a 5. But I didn't resolve on those. I resolved on the other major chord, so it must be the 1 chord. So that's just a straight A major chord progression. What if I had something like this? A, then B, again 2 majors next to each other. They must be a 4 and a 5 chord. You could play A Lydian, B mixed Lydian, but that's too much thinking. Find the one that sounds like home and treat that as the sort of key center and play the mode relevant to that chord. So what I've done there is I've only given you 1 pentatonic scale pattern for minor and 1 pentatonic scale for major. So that kind of locks you into one part of the neck. But of course you can use the whole neck. And if you know your caged system really well, you'll know you've got 5 major chord shapes, C-shaped bar chord, A shape bar called G shape, E shape, D shape, that spells out caged. And you've got the same thing for the minor cage system. And I did videos all about that, so you're welcome to go and check those out. And if that helps, then come back here. If you already know them, you're set to go. And what I'll do is I'll flash up on the screen now the 5 major pentatonic scales and the chords they fit over, and all the associated modes. And I'll do the same thing for minor, so you can take screenshots if you want. Alternatively, they're all in my new book about music theory, which will be coming out very soon. So keep an eye on the description. Well, I'll eventually, in the next week or so, have a link to download that. Anyway, I hope that was useful to you. If so, please click like and subscribe. Thank you.